Hi.
Okay.
Can you hear us now?
Can you hear
Apologies.
us now?
Yep, hear you.
Okay, it's all good. Okay, I was saying, how are you doing? Better now, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
No, much
Appreciate
better.
it. Awesome. Cool. Hey, tell us about Call of the Void.
Yes. So, Call of the Void is my newest feature film. It's a horror film that we shot actually right out here in Big Bear. Coincidentally, I'm out here for spring break with my kids, so just a fun coincidence. But it's a story of Murray. She's a woman in her 30s who just lost her brother, is alienated from her parents, and then lost her job. And she goes to the woods basically to seek, some sort of restart, eat, pray, love, some sort of, you know, restart to her life. And she finds something else, as you would imagine in a horror film. But yeah, it's my take on kind of a weird fiction story, short of story, like a Lovecraft or that sort of thing.
Let's actually look at the trailer here for the film. I have it queued up, which comes out. Is it come out this week from Gravitas Ventures?
That would be April 15th on
April
Tuesday.
15th. All
Yeah,
right, so tax day.
yeah,
After your
exactly.
taxes, check out this movie. Here, let's look at the trailer together.
Hi, my name is Lucy. I just wanted to apologize for all the noise last night.
I actually came up here to have some time to myself.
Well, actually, we're going to the mountain. If you want to come, you're totally welcome.
We're gonna take the trail up this way to a flat area called Fiddler's Green. Once we're up there, I'm gonna take each of you to your solo spot. So as long as you don't wander off, you should be fine.
But yesterday on that hike, something happened.
Daryl, you gotta watch where you step, man.
It's a damn good trailer.
Oh, thank
Man,
you.
gotta get that trailer music really sells it. What obviously sound design is a big part of horror and thrillers. What went into that specifically? That trailer music was phenomenal.
Well, I did cut the trailer, and I used, I'm an editor by trade, so I used a lot of just resources from my personal library. But yeah, speaking of the film itself, I really have to tip my hat to the people at Smart Post Sound because going into this film, it is a movie about sound. Specifically, it's dealing with a phenomena, a hum that's taking place out in the woods. And because of that, it would be really bad if the sound didn't live up to kind of the expectations of being kind of the creature of the feature. So um, now we subvert that a little bit, and if you go see the movie, you'll understand what I mean. But the important thing is like, okay, it's got to have the atmosphere of Alien. It's got to have the real great horror film sound design that isn't necessarily manipulating you and leading you along the way, but is always present, always ratcheting, and always giving you a sense that you're there. You can feel the stickiness. You can feel the sense of cold, and all those things that are very much part of the threatening nature of the wild. But yeah, so yeah, the working with that team and specifically the sequences that take place where the characters go on a solo hike, which is central kind of to the kind of kickoff of the plot, is that they each separate themselves along a path. And this is something I've done myself multiple times, but it's meant to be kind of like an experience of like, oh, like I'm you know I'm feeling a sense of attachment to nature, of a sense of smallness, a sense of humility, a sense of a lot of things, that you can only experience when you kind of separate yourself from others. The problem is of course, if you find yourself in a horror film, that is not a good place to be. And those experiences where the characters start to hear the things around them is really where the horror begins. And that was that was one of those moments, and when you look at it on the page and you're just like, okay, this is the way. And that's really important to me.
Well, I notice you're in a cabin right now, so
Yeah,
watch yourself.
I know.
We got over 2,000 people watching live, and they have a lot of questions for you.
Awesome.
So let's get some questions here. Alan, if you would.
Yeah, ADLs24. Having to wear so many hats on this project, writer, producer, director, and editor, which one are you most passionate about, and which one gave you the most frustration on this project?
That's a great question, because, and it's a question I think you could ask any like truly independent filmmaker, because wearing of different hats is just, it's part of the gig. There's never a perfect situation where you only get to do one job. Now, as a writer, I've always loved being a director, because it's given me the ability to see the follow through, see the completion, and I've always cherished that. I mentioned it before, I'm an editor by trade. Editing informs everything I do, because not knowing where these puzzle pieces have to be would mean that I may do a lot of extra work that wouldn't end up making it into the film. I've always felt that was important, that the going into, especially as an independent filmmaker with limited resources, you have to go know where you're actually putting all these shots that you're working hours sometimes to set up. So yeah, I find all these things essential, and producing is just kind of the end all be all of making sure that things show up on time and things get done. And when they don't, trouble abounds, my friend. And that's, so yeah, I think every job is essential, and I was fortunate to work with so many amazing people on this film. But yeah, I think the choice to edit it was essential to my writing and directing, and producing is just something that I have learned to do along the way.
Some comments too. Technique says, I'm digging the cabin vibe. Jimmy Francis says, cool. We share the same distribution company. All the best
Nice.
to your film. And Solomon Thornton says, greetings, Sir James. What was your approach for writing this film?
That's a great question, because I would have to also speak to some of the reading I was doing at the time. So the origin of this film goes back to when I was setting up another project called Hurricane Party, and things were just not coming together. Unfortunately, the scope was too big in some ways, and it just was a real challenge to see that thing come together. But we were getting close, dangerously close, one might say, to getting into production. And I remember talking to Clayton Warbuck is the composer on this and my previous feature, Control Delete, also known as Hacked. That we were talking about, like, gosh, I would love to tell you that we're going tomorrow, but we're not going tomorrow because X, Y, and Z is happening. I have this other thing. I would just love to just escape to the woods and go shoot. And lo and behold, it's when you're it's the John Lennon lyric, life is what happens when you're making other plans. And Call of the Void is what happened when I was trying to plan a different movie. And I came together, and I was like, okay, I have a location because I'm standing in it right now. I have an idea because I've been reading H.P. Lovecraft, loved Color Out of Space, love Richard Stanley's Color Out of Space. I recommend anybody else check that out, with Nicolas Cage. It is a trip.
I love that. I've seen that movie. That is amazing. That film is awesome.
Yeah. No, and he's an excellent man too. I've had the pleasure of meeting him in Providence. And so that story, though, is about a color that just demolishes this poor family in the woods. A color, not literally. So what that brought out of me was like, well, what's an element that could, like that you could, turn into a movie? Like what, like that's a really interesting idea from the get go. And sound is an essential tool of all filmmakers. And you hear about these hums and these unexplainable phenomena. And it just kind of, it was one of those moments of electrons just kind of fusing together, and you're like, oh, let's do this. So I started writing it before 2020, but I had a lot more time to write during 2020. And then, eventually we got the go ahead to go shoot, and the rest is Call of the Void.
Here we go. The nerd far away says, I like a preview that makes me want to know more. And Aid Ellis 24 says, how did Gravitas Ventures, one of the great supporters of indie cinema, get involved in the project? Was the film completed before they got involved, or did they support the production throughout?
So Gravitas Ventures and I go back to when we had the film I talked about before, Control Alt Delete, which actually, Chris, I think you interviewed me for way back when at Geek Fest at Comic Palooza.
Oh my God,
that
might have been years ago.
I know,
Oh,
it was
man.
years
I
ago.
don't remember. Was it me? I don't know.
Well, I shared a stage with you nonetheless, but
We were on a panel together. That was it.
Yeah,
Is it a panel?
exactly.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
it. Now, yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, basically, we've been in talks. They passed on that film, which is fine. But stayed in contact, and the acquisitions people over there were always, very much saying like, "Hey, we'd like to see what you do next." And I took them at their word and just kept in contact. And when it came time to, this film was finished ultimately, see if they would be interested in releasing it, and they were. And it, I'm very grateful for working with the actual team to release this film and actually have marketing people and all that stuff that as an indie filmmaker you do not expect. You do not expect to have an actual phone number and a human on the other end of it to talk to when you're wanting to make sure that your film is a success. So I'm very grateful to them, and working with them has been wonderful.
And Christopher Moonlight Productions, what Lovecraft stories influenced you the most? Gives me a Yellow Brick Road vibe, which I like. Also makes me think of Color Out of Space, the book, not the movie. So Chris has noticed that. That's cool.
Well, I'm so glad he mentioned Yellow Brick Road, because that was one of those movies I wish people talked more about. It's just such a a weird and interesting movie. And I see the comparison for sure. People should check that one out. But yeah, I mean, in terms of H.P. Lovecraft stories, I mean, I personally, I have a script for the festival that I'd love to see get made, because that just is, it's classic Lovecraft, and it's very much dealing with a person coming home and dealing with a family that they've become separated from, and they discover, of course, their family were witches. So it's very, I mean, there's just so many cool directions it goes in, and it has what I think is one of Lovecraft's most interesting monsters, like real monsters that would be really cool to see executed with some really cool practical and visual effects. It's really a great story, and it's kind of an under thought about story. It's actually a Christmas story, which I love even more. Christmas horror is one of my favorite subgenres, and I'm surprised this story hasn't been tapped more often for it.
I love that subgenre as well.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
8 Ellis 24 again says, as a fellow member of the Ellis clan, what made Richard Ellis the right pick for what looks like one of the more antagonistic roles in the film?
Well, first of all, I was introduced to Richard through our casting director, Bass Casting, who I've been fortunate to work with them twice. And what they always have brought to the table is they brought to me not just excellent actors, but also great coworkers. And one of the things I loved about working with Richard is that he always drilled down to the question that needed to be answered to get this scene done. And when it comes to that character, it was a really it wasn't a challenge interpersonally by any means, but it was a challenge because that character is a few different layers deep before the story even begins, and that may make more sense if you once you see the film. But it's a really cool thing to kind of peel back and say like, okay, this is where this is where your character is right now. This is where your character is going to be. This is where your character was beforehand, and all those things are such vital questions, like plot specific questions, that having somebody as detail oriented and as really willing to do the work and dig into it, I couldn't have pulled it off without Richard's help. I mean, he's just an excellent guy, and he was really devoted to pulling it off, and he did. I mean, it's a really cool performance, and it's a performance that, it on the surface doesn't seem that complicated until you start to unwind what's actually going on. And that to me, I mean, that's a fun character, and I think he and I both enjoyed the process of making Sterling real. So that was cool.
And one final question. The movie is out April 15th here in the States. Stevie Dan 1969 says, will the movie be shown in the UK?
It will eventually. And I say that because we are currently in talks for international distribution in general. It's not that is not under Gravitas's umbrella, so that's going to be, there's going to be local distributors that are handling those. I don't know at this moment when, but I do know that it will be released in the UK, and I'm looking forward to sharing that because I've got a lot of friends across the pond who have been asking the very same question, and I hope it's theatrical. That would be great. The world needs more of that, so that'd be awesome.
I would agree. James, thank you so much for joining us here on the show. Congrats again, and come back when you've got another movie.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Alan. I really appreciate both of you, and let me share Call of the Void with the world.
Cool. And I'll see you on a panel, I'm sure, at like I don't know, LA Comic-Con or wherever we were. I think it was LA Comic-Con.
Yeah. Stan Lee's was at the time, I believe it was. But yeah,
Kamikaze, love it.
Yeah,
right. James,
pour
take
one out
care.
for that.
Stay safe in the woods.
I'll try.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Have a good one.